All right, guys. So as I said, delighted to be joined by Amanda today. Amanda, thank you for taking the time to have a chat.
Good to see you, Tom, and hear you. Sorry,
yes.
we're on a podcast, but I can see you.
This is, well, it's becoming a theme as I recorded my last episode. Technical issues with me. My tech savviness is letting me down, and we're stumbling through, but we're getting there in the end. So today, a little bit of a different one. Perhaps, normally we're talking about guys building more muscle, dropping body fat, getting stronger, all these things, and we may touch on certain aspects of your training and how that's influenced what you've been through the last 4 months. But tell us about what you've been through over the last 4 months.
So pretty simple, like long story short, I contracted coronavirus during probably what would be March break here. I'm actually located in Texas in the States. Mm-hmm. And I have been sick for 4 months. So I had coronavirus, probably mild to moderate symptoms. It was enough to send me to bed. I wasn't very well. I had to go to the hospital to see if it wasn't anything too serious I need to be hospitalized with. Recovered from that, and then was left with these residual long symptoms, which have now been sort of like given the moniker long haul symptoms. And so then for the following 10 to 12 weeks have been struggling with these long haul symptoms that are actually worse than having the coronavirus, in my opinion. And probably if you were to ask anybody else who is a long hauler, they're also feeling like this part of it has been the worst. Yeah.
So, I remember early days of COVID, so over here in the UK and things coming through the news, Tom Hanks came out and said, it's not that big of a deal. And I think it was probably early days for him. Now, who knows if he's had long-term symptoms, if he's one of these long haulers, but I think that perhaps that's one of the reasons people aren't giving it, the respect it deserves, as it were, and thinking that this, much like many people talk about, it's like the flu, which of course it is actually very different to that. But it's an unusual one that you can have symptoms, as you say, relatively mild. If you don't mind, what sort of symptoms were you experiencing right at the start?
Yeah, so like you were talking about Tom Hanks, and I was watching Idris Elba as well, and he was saying, it's not so bad, like I've got a bit of a temperature, I've got a bit of a fever, and I had all of those things. I started with what I thought were allergies. I had really itchy eyes and a sore throat, but antihistamines wouldn't take that away. Like the back of my nose started getting sore, then it went into my chest. Then I had the cough that everybody talks about. So I had a bad cough, and then crazy fever, and then I started having these crazy dreams and bad insomnia and paranoia. It was really weird. The mental health side of it was really bizarre. I actually thought that the world was against me, and then I would wake up in the middle of the night after having these crazy dreams, and I'd feel like I had an elephant sat on my chest. I couldn't breathe. It was suffocating. And then the fever was a low grade the whole time, and it peaked and troughed. And actually, I'm a menopausal woman, right? And that's something else that I had to consider with these hot flashes. I couldn't work out whether I was having temperature changes because of that, or whether it was coronavirus. And so it wasn't very pleasant, and it lasted for a good 3 solid weeks. And then by the end of the 4th week, I felt like I'd turned a corner, and I thought, that's gone. If that was the 4 weeks I've got to put up with, that's fine, and I can deal with that, but it wasn't very pleasant. And the whole time in those 4 weeks, I just kept thinking, my chest and my breathing are really impacted here. And I went to ER actually, because at the time that was the only place you could go to see a specialist. Mm-hmm. And they were saying, no, your oxygen level's gone down slightly, but your lungs are clear, and there's nothing that needs us to keep you in hospital. And I remember saying to the ER doctor, oh my God, I feel so sick as well. I can't imagine how it would be if I had the infection in my lungs and my oxygen level was down below 70. And he just said, this is brutal. This is like nothing we've ever seen, and you really should consider yourself lucky that you're young and healthy. He said I was young and I'm 50, so I was having that. You're young and you're healthy and you'll be able to fight this. So I went home actually feeling really quite confident that I was going to be okay. And then I did fight it, and I did get better. But then I thought, oh, I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to go for a little workout. And I'd get up on that morning and I'd feel like really fatigued, and I was short of breath. And so I would just go for a walk instead. And I would go for a walk for about half an hour, and I would come home and I would have to go back to bed. And some days I would be sent back to bed for days. It was almost as though my capacity to just do normal things, or even things within a normal window, had been diminished. So I had to lose the idea of exercising. I had to just look at my day and think, what can you actually do through your day now that's not going to send you reeling and send you back to bed?
Yeah. Okay, so we touched on a bit on the psychological. You mentioned there, like the mindset. So from my perspective, I haven't had it, but we were in lockdown for the best part of 4 months here. And then one of the hardest things I know was not, there wasn't a definite end date. So you didn't have a target you were set. You know, if you knew it's 4 months, you could almost mentally prepare yourself. Now, that was as someone who wasn't ill. I was just stuck at home. For you, who's had this going on and you don't know when you're going to feel better, and yeah, I suppose technically if you're going to feel 100% again, how psychologically, how have you battled that? How have you found that?
Well, actually, Tom, that's like a really great question. And the fact that you said if is like really important, because I'm pretty positive as a person, you know, like I don't have a dire outlook on life, and I was pretty confident I was going to get better over this. But there were times when I was so exhausted physically, mentally, emotionally, that I remember like lying in bed, like bawling my eyes out, crying, going, what if this is it? Like, what if this is something I'm always going to have? I can't get my breath. I can't walk up the stairs without feeling utterly exhausted and having to sit down at the top of the stairs. Like, what if this is... like I've got permanent lung damage? What if I've got scarring on my lungs or my heart that can't be reversed? Because that's what's happening to people. And I actually did go into a bit of a well of despair. And the other side of that is that while I was sick for those 4 weeks and I was having these sort of like feelings of paranoia, I was also having feelings of real isolation. And I live in a big Texas house. Like, we came to Texas for 4 years, so I made my husband buy a big Texas house, and we got loads of space. And I was at home with my 2 kids and my husband, and they literally closed the bedroom door on me and wanted nothing to do with me. They didn't even make me a cup of tea. They were little shits, actually. But I think they just didn't know what to do and didn't know how to help me. And I never felt so alone and isolated ever. I just kept thinking, if they ask me how I'm doing one more time, I'm going to literally throat punch them, because I don't know how to continually tell them that I feel terrible without just saying the same adjectives over and over again. Yeah. It was very, very frustrating. And then as I started to get better, and then I was in this like mysterious place where I was doing things and getting knocked back. It was literally a case of taking 1 step forward, 2 steps back along the way, and not feeling any real progress, but also not hearing anybody else talking about this. Tom Hanks and Idris Elba just got on with their lives. All of these dickheads who were like not wearing masks and stuff and were getting sick and then getting better after 2 weeks. I was like, why me? Like, I definitely had a why me moment. And then I found that there was a Facebook, I saw one article that somebody sent me about 8 weeks in, between 6 and 8 weeks in, that somebody sent me about these long-term symptoms. And there was a Facebook group called Survivor Core, and there was another one as well, I can't remember the name of it. And I went in there and just said, listen, it's been like 80, 90 days. I feel terrible. I'm not getting better. I'm doing everything I need to do. Like, what is anybody else feeling like this? And then my post just erupted, and there's literally hundreds of thousands of people in the same situation as me. And so all of a sudden, the feelings of despair and isolation and maybe doubting myself, like thinking, is this all in my head? Do I just need to push through? Like we do with exercise. guys, overcome. And they all sort of like calmed down, and I just thought, okay, this is what's happening to people. And actually what happened even more from that group is the group then became an advocate for us all, and they're now getting national recognition. And actually not just national recognition, but scientific recognition, because this group is now being used as a resource for universities, scientific communities, to say we need to understand what's happening with this new virus, and we can see that people are not getting over this like they should.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So, I mean, also, has that group become something of a support network for you? Because you talked about how you felt so isolated at first. It is knowing that other people are suffering like you are, and you've got, presumably you can go back and forward and share experiences, but just feel like I'm not the only one. Has that been very helpful?
Absolutely. In fact, it was the only thing. But the other thing, though, is that over here, like a GP is a primary care provider, like it's the same thing. I mean, I wasn't able to go and see him because we had only telehealth, like telemedicine appointments. But he was brilliant. He was actually, he had a nurse practitioner who worked with him, and she didn't believe me. She basically was like, yeah, you should be fine. There's nothing wrong with you. Your blood works fine. Because they can test your immune response. They can test your white blood cell count and all of those. And my blood work's always been stellar. Like, I'm not an unhealthy person, Even going into this 2 weeks before my annual checkup, my blood work was fine. Like, there was no reason I should get as sick as I did, like statistically. And so she dismissed me, and I felt completely gaslighted, and I just felt so dismissed. But I'm a really good advocate for myself. So I then made another appointment with the doctor who was just coming back into work from a vacation, complained about her, told her that I need to be believed and that I'm not well, I'm not making this up. He did believe me, and he basically said, what we see in other viruses that are similar in nature to this, meaning they're from the same family, like H1N1 or other SARS type illnesses, and even the flu, lots of people have post-viral syndrome. That's a known medical term, and post-viral syndrome doesn't have an end date, and it doesn't, some people struggle for a few weeks after. Some people can have the flu and then have a cough for 6 months afterwards that they just don't lose. And he just said to me, this possibly is just post-viral syndrome. And so we need to just understand that with that comes fatigue, exhaustion, and you need to start looking at your life in a different way and working intelligently within the scope that you currently are, knowing that you're going to get better. He said, but the problem is with this new virus, we don't know that you are going to get better, right? Because we don't know enough. So then he referred me to a pulmonologist, somebody who deals with lungs, who is an expert. And I got referred into a cohort of post-COVID survivors who are having lung issues. And so I started to see a pulmonologist and got real answers. And it was so refreshing to have two people that were supporting me as well as this group on Facebook. But I know that I'm really lucky in that respect, because I'm a bit mouthy and I don't mind saying, I'm not going away anywhere until you tell me what's wrong. I'm sort of going to keep pushing. And he knew me because I've been with him 3 years, and he knew I was that person. But there's plenty of people in there that are in that group that are just being pushed aside and dismissed and are just left floundering and desperate. And I wanted answers, even if the answer was, we don't know, we can't tell you that. That was better than being ignored. Yes,
yeah. I suppose to some extent there's obviously a lot of ignorance about it. Well, it's new, so unsurprisingly we don't know that much about it. And then there's if you've got a nurse or somebody who just palms you off, if you're someone in that situation, because you don't know anything about it either. I mean, we have an understanding of how flu is and what you can expect with this. I suppose because we know nothing, many of us just accept, perhaps I'm making a fuss. Maybe it's me and I'm overplaying this.
And how many times has that happened in our life in health in general? Not just through this. We'll go to the doctors and we get dismissed, and we go home feeling like failures, that we're not doing something right. And yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, actually, my favourite story of my GP is I once went to him with some symptoms, and he just turned around and said, "You look too well to be sick," and literally wanted to pack me off at that point. I mean, it's like, I cannot believe that doing what you do, you've just said that. But
that's what happened with the nurse practitioner. So I live in Texas. I'd read about vitamin D being helpful in the recovery, whether it is or it isn't. I just thought it's not going to hurt me. So I started to increase in my vitamin D supplementation, but I also started going and sitting outside for 30 minutes solid, not naked, but like no sunscreen.
Yeah.
And so I have a tan, I look well, I've never looked unhealthy. So when I'm doing this video call with the nurse, she turned around and said, "You look great though." And I was like, fuck you. Like literally I was furious. Yeah.
Yeah, not ideal, not ideal. Actually, so interesting. So vitamin D, that got some coverage. I think perhaps turmeric's had or curcumin's had some coverage. Since you've been seeing some more specialists, have they had any kind of prescription or protocols in place that they feel is helping you individually or showing any promise?
Yeah, and it's been really interesting because my pulmonologist is the one that really helped me. So, but initially, my GP put me on a set of prednisone, which is a steroid that had been shown to help, and it did help. Clearly, my body was riddled with inflammation, I wasn't great about going on steroids, but I was too sick and I needed help. So that helped. But his main prescription for me was rest, hydrate, the usual things, work within your energy envelope, which I'd like to talk about as well from an exercise perspective. But the pulmonologist was a little bit more thorough because he recognized that COVID was doing a number on people's guts. Like my guts are a mess and I was short of breath and I had fatigue. They were my three main lingering symptoms. And when I described my symptoms to him, he started treating me for GERD. So GERD is like extreme acid reflux and asthma. Mm-hmm. And he basically said that what can happen with they know that the intestinal flora is getting messed up with COVID. It's getting into all of the systems. Acid reflux is something that he'd seen in lots of his patients that was happening, and then the acid from the acid reflux aspirates into the lungs, and it can cause chest pain and it can cause shortness of breath. And he just said, I can treat you for asthma and GERD, and in the meantime, I'll set you a series of tests, like a CT scan for your lungs and breathing tests. These things aren't going to hurt you and they may help you. And within 2 weeks of taking that medicine, my symptoms started to die down. I stopped being short of breath. And so that made a lot of sense to me. And my CT scan came back with absolutely no damage to my lungs or my heart. It was such a relief.
Yeah, I bet.
So, yeah. And so because he said to me, because I was dealing with stomach issues and asthma-based stuff, there was things that I could do from a lifestyle holistic point of view, like he was saying, supplementation and stuff, that I thought, right, let's just work with what I know and what the doctors told me and what, some studies are showing. And then also anecdotally what people are saying, because I thought to myself, I'm just going to throw everything at this. I'm going to throw the book at this recovery because I really just want to feel better. And the minute that I knew that there was no permanent damage, it made me realize that I sort of had some control over the recovery. And that's sort of what was key for me getting better. And so, I totally took the pharmaceutical route. So I'm on these GERD medications and an asthma protocol that's really helpful. And also, your listeners are going to love this, but I have so much shit coming out my lungs, so much mucus that I'm on mucus medication and I'm doing the, the neti pod thing to cough up crap. And anyway, so I'm doing all of that. From an exercise point of view, I started to think I was going to go crazy because I wasn't moving. I needed to move, not for my physical health, but for my mental health. I just was like, I can't not move, but every time I move, I'm just exhausted. What can I do? So I thought it's boiling hot here in Texas. Going for a walk was just killing me. It was taking my breath away. It was aggravating the asthma type symptoms I was having. So I thought, I'm going to go to the pool. The pools were open here. They're open air. You'd be so jealous now in the UK, but like the outdoor pools. But I can't swim, right? I'm a total like Brit. I did a couple of lessons at school. I do breaststroke, and I flounder my way to one length of the pool, and then I'm exhausted, right? So I just thought, I'm just going to get in the water and just do some breaststroke up and down and just see how it feels. And I was coming out of the pool after like 15, 20 minutes. I was actually pulling back, not doing as much. And I felt quite good. I felt like it wasn't aggravating my breathing, and it was actually calming my breathing down a little bit. And so I just started doing more and more swimming. So what I decided to do is just go and swim, but not push myself too much. I'd been told about working within an energy envelope, and the energy envelope was basically advice given by the NHS in Bristol about post-viral fatigue. And it was saying that over-stressing your body and pushing yourself too much is actually really detrimental to recovery. And people with chronic fatigue syndrome also struggle with this. They are told not to push too hard. And so if I felt like I could swim for 20 minutes, I would just swim for 10 to 15 minutes. And I would always pull back and pull back. And for some reason, the swimming really helped me. And I think it was the cooler temperatures and the regulated breathing, but it really has helped my lung capacity just feel efficient again, because I was always really struggling. And I actually taught myself to swim as well. I ended up just doing one length and then being knackered and then having to do breaststroke. And now I'm doing like a kilometer each time. And I remember Tim Ferriss in his 4-Hour Body? He did total immersion, I think it was called.
Yes.
And I just watched a few videos and thought, I'm doing it all wrong. I'm like kicking like a lunatic and I'm trying too hard. And so I'm quite proud of the fact that I was super sick with COVID and I taught myself to swim. So that's like one of the positives out of it. In addition to that, I started doing some breath work, focused breath work. Because I thought, well, the physiotherapists that are involved with the respiratory side of this are encouraging people to do that diaphragmatic breathing. So I'd pull from my yoga past and just from the pelvic floor work I've done that's all about the diaphragm and stuff. And I even took some of the Wim Hof stuff as well and just thought, oh, fuck it, I'm just going to do all these different. So every day I sit and do a 5-minute breathing thing. Whether that helps or not, I literally don't care. I'm doing these things whether they work or not, because some of it's going to be helpful, some of it's going to be placebo. I just don't know, but none of it's going to hurt me.
Exactly, yeah.
And then when it comes to the supplementation things, I already took some supplements, not crazy amounts, but my energy levels are low and I'm menopausal, so chances are my B12 is low. So I started supplementing with that. I already did with vitamin D plus K. I just started just increasing, even vitamin C. I'd take one of those, you do the Borax over there, I think, don't you? I do the emergency with a bit of iodine in. Honestly, I just started throwing stuff at it. And I do that religiously as well, because I just know that none of it's going to hurt me and it may help. But honestly, my blood work shows that my immune response has been strong to this. So, who knows? Something very interesting came out of the blood work, though, because my doctor took monthly blood work from me because he wanted to see my progress. And interestingly enough, my blood work stayed steady throughout, before, during and after. And I don't really understand all of the numbers in the blood work, but I do get a little bit nerdy about it, like most of us fitness people do. But what coronavirus did do is it reactivated Epstein-Barr virus in me. Right. And Epstein-Barr virus, I think in the UK, is called glandular fever, mono, the kissing disease.
Yes.
And I'd never had it. I didn't think I'd ever had it. But the doctor said to me that about 90% of people have it. It's like a herpes type virus, I think. And it lays dormant and it basically sits there and waits for the perfect storm. Mm-hmm. To reactivate, and that's what COVID did. So the chances are that during that 10 weeks, I was also like fighting the ravages of mono. And that's something I'm seeing all the time as well. I don't know. It's been quite the journey.
Yeah, that doesn't sound much fun. Like, so I have had glandular fever.
Oh,
and I remember that was when I was like 19, and you just wiped out, just completely shattered.
How long for though? So I don't know anything about it.
So glandular fever, I would have been... It would have been in pre-season. I remember it was pre-season of rugby when I was 19, and well, basically, like I just had this huge lump come up on my neck, which was the glands being swollen, I presume, and went to the doctor thinking, what's this horrible disease I've got, and thought, well, people might as well know now how I discovered it. Like, I was bench pressing, I was warming up with a weight which literally was like not much more than the bar, and I got pinned by only a little bit more than the bar. Like, no one
Where's
knew what
my
I should have been able to do. Exactly. Yeah. And I was actually training at my parents', like in the spare room back then, and like literally my sister and my dad had to come in and lift. Like, I could barely lift the bar off myself. And then it was the next morning I woke up and my glands were like this. Because I just felt shattered, but didn't really know what it was. And then, yes, sure enough, it was glandular fever. Now, for me, it seems like I got over it quite quickly because I was able to go back and do pre-season for rugby, and that's only like a 6-week period. So probably within a month I was back. But when I told one of the other guys at the club, he was like, oh, it's horrible. I had like 3 months with that last year. So obviously these things affect you slightly differently. But yeah, as a horrible combination, that with COVID sounds pretty horrific, to be honest.
I know. And I don't know how bad the Epstein-Barr virus came back, but I don't think it helped. It didn't help the fact that I was feeling so exhausted and couldn't recover and couldn't even go for a walk, right? And then the only other thing I changed was I really focused on getting good quality sleep, because for the first 6 weeks I had insomnia with coronavirus, which seems to be impacting people. And I've never had insomnia. I'm a proper good sleeper, and I've never had sleep issues. So that actually resolved itself. But I did increase my magnesium and melatonin for that, and just decrease the caffeine and, the blue screens, all the sleep hygiene things that we know. And then as far as diet was concerned, I didn't have an appetite for the first while, and so I didn't eat very much. And then when I wanted to eat, I just wanted to eat rubbish because I was run down. You know how it is. And so I did all that without too much judgment, and just thought it is what it is right now. But now I've started to feel a little bit better. I'm back on track, just trying to eat really good nutrient dense food with a few tweaks that can help with the GERD, with the acid reflux, which are very small things that, that can help support, the recovery of that.
Yeah, okay, so actually a couple of things I want to sort of jump back to. You mentioned earlier, so I hadn't heard about the gut issue and the gut being affected, but that makes, you can see if it is affecting the gut, most of your immune system is built in the gut. So if that's compromised, then of course the knock-on effect is you're then going to struggle for your immune function, and your recovery is going to be impaired. So that's fascinating. Not something I'd heard about, and I suppose that feeds into this whole thing of maybe when you were feeling, is it just me? Because there's just not that information out there for people. No one really knows what suffering with COVID actually means. But
there's a lot of people getting either really bad constipation or really bad diarrhea. And my children got sick for a little bit, only for about a week, and it was with diarrhea. It was interesting. Right. So I think it just impacts people very differently. But yeah, the gut issues are just unpleasant. But they're not bad. They're just unpleasant.
Okay. Actually, so that's interesting. That's another thing I was going to ask. Obviously, with your family, you got two kids?
2 boys, yeah.
2 boys. And so they perhaps both had it, but very mild. We don't know. They haven't been tested to know if they've had.
So none of those got tested. Yeah. So my husband didn't get sick at all, but he was actually in the recovery of flu, and he was tested for flu, and he was positive for flu. But part of me just wants to blame him for getting this. I think he gave it to me. Anyway, we'll stick with that story. My 2 boys, my youngest is 13 and wasn't very sick at all. He just was really grumpy for a week, and I just thought he was being a little turd, a teenager can be. Very tired, kept going to bed at 7 o'clock, that type of thing, and waking up and not eating. And my oldest boy, who is almost an adult, he's 17, 18, he had really bad stomach, but he also I actually, looking back now, don't know whether this was because, like you were saying, being in isolation and being the mental health aspect of it, because he does have some anxieties as well. But he came downstairs once and he was really upset, crying, and he was like paranoid that all his friends had turned against him and he was alone in the world and that nobody cared about him. And it was really hard to talk him out from this, and it went on for about a week, and then he started to turn a corner, and I went back and said, do you still feel like that about your friends? He went, no. Like, don't be stupid. And so I think that, like, it's really interesting because you're hearing about the neurological aspects of the disease as well. So I mean, no, we didn't get tested, and I have also come back with no antibodies as well, which was I was gutted, absolutely gutted. So I found out last week I have no antibodies, and my doctor phoned me up and he has reassured me that I probably do, but and I don't understand immunology at all. It's so complex, and when people talk about boosting your immune system and all that BS, I know they clearly don't know what they're talking about, because if you've studied nutrition or physiology of the body, you understand how complex the immune system is. But they're testing for B cell immunity, and I understand that that's easy to test for, but they're not testing for the T cell immunity. And I don't really truly understand it, but I understand that there's different ways the body can fight the virus. And they think about 30% of the population who have had this low viral dose of are maybe using T cells to fight immunity. But I have to act like I've not had it.
Yeah, so that's tough as well. So, I mean, part of me, I had an antibody test just because at the gym that I work at, they offered it for everyone. I've had no symptoms, but it was like, part of me was kind of really hoping maybe I'm one of those people who's had it, been asymptomatic. They're like, yeah, you've got immunity, all these antibodies, you're ready to rock and roll, because then I feel like I'd be a bit more relaxed. But then at the same token, you're like, well, even if I have my grandmother who's touching 90, she hasn't, I'm going to want to go and see her, but I need social distancing if I can't be cavalier myself. So which is another thing I think is an issue. People are like, it's no big deal for me, but they're not realizing the wider picture and the implications of if you put yourself in contact and then you go and what are your parents or your grandparents, what impact could you have on them? Because you were really fit and healthy, and this has knocked you for 4 months. Someone who's not in that state, it could be much more severe. I mean, it's obviously it's life threatening. It's
so difficult. None of the choices are easy at all. I mean, I hear you, and even if you did come back with a positive antibody test, they now don't know how long the antibodies last, right? I mean, if it's like the flu in that respect, you may not hold on to the antibodies, or you may have a diluted version. And I mean, I don't really understand. I'm talking out my bum now, right? But the fact is, it doesn't matter to me, in all honesty, because one of the reasons to care about antibodies is to be able to donate blood plasma, and I can't donate blood over here because they don't like British blood because at all. If any Brits over here can't give blood because of CJD, remember the mad cat disease? Okay. So in Canada, in all of North America, and you can't donate blood in case there's a risk of that, which is bonkers. Whatever. But so I can't give blood. So the antibody test means nothing to me, and I'm also not going to be a dick about this. I'm still going to social distance. I'm still going to sanitize my hands. I'm still going to wear a mask because I care about other people. So nothing changes. Although it would have been nice. I wouldn't have minded that badge of honor, but I didn't get it. So
yeah, well, you at least think you could get something out of this. I mean, well, learning to swim. That's the big win so far. So again, you talked about, I think, yourself having some anxiety earlier on, and your eldest son. One person I know who's had this, they were like hallucinating, insomnia, hallucinations. Did you have anything like that?
Well. My dreams were really vivid, but I am that person anyway, so I was waking up with these crazy dreams that were waking up and I thought they were real. So if that's what the hallucinations were, then yes, I had that. But my dreams are crazy anyway, I'm always getting chased by a wild bear or something, so none of that's different. But my usual like logical sort of like conscious self that doesn't overthink situations and doesn't look on things with loads of doom and gloom left me. And I definitely was overwhelmed with like impending doom all the time. Like, I just can't carry on like this. I never felt suicidal, but I just thought, how much more of this am I supposed to take? And then but my son, who has the anxiety, definitely had paranoia and didn't sleep for weeks after this. It was crazy. So I don't know, it could have been a combination of the virus or our circumstances, but I have to be honest, our circumstances were pretty cushy. I told you we have a nice space, a nice garden. We actually got to see my husband, who travels most of the year, and he's home. So we actually really, despite COVID, me having COVID, really enjoyed being at home together, for the first 2 months. So I don't know. It's just so difficult, but I'm hearing more and more about these hallucinations, and some of them are just bonkers. Yeah,
and again, it's not something you get coverage of. I mean, only because I've spoken to one person who described that. Otherwise, I wouldn't know. They're not reporting that on the news, or certainly not that I've seen. So
it's the things they're not reporting that I think are very frustrating to people like me who have had these long-term symptoms. And we hear both ends of the spectrum, the asymptomatic people who are those who have a low dose and they're over in 2 weeks, the Tom Hanks and the Idris Elbas, or the people that get hospitalized or maybe don't ever come out and die, unfortunately. But there's this big grey area in the middle of other things that are happening that are just not getting spoken about, and they're the ones that are getting dismissed. And I find it very frustrating when I'm like watching the news and they're only talking about the death count, and they're only talking about the asymptomatic people, and they're not talking about those who cannot thrive anymore, and then the people who are dismissive that this, like you said in the beginning, that this isn't that bad. I shouldn't say this. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it.
Bite your tongue there.
Yeah.
Resist that. So the long haulers and these persistent symptoms, I've only seen one article that I've come across to talk about that. It was actually on BBC Sport, and it was a personal trainer was interviewed because they were saying, I think they're also an Olympic lifter to a pretty good standard. And they were basically like, I'm young, fit, healthy in my 20s, but I just 4 months later, or maybe at the point 3 months later, but I just can't do anything. And in theory, I've recovered, but I do not feel recovered in any way, shape or form. And the only other reason I know anything about it is because one of my clients has had it, and he has asthma beforehand and is really struggling still. So much like you saying, like sometimes you'd go out for a walk and just feel exhausted. He has his gym in a garage, and he literally has to go downstairs across the garden to the garage. And he's like, sometimes I got there and I just sat down on the bench, waited 10 minutes. Yeah, exactly. waited 10 minutes till I felt like I could move, and I walked back inside. And the thing is, he's contacting me because I write his program, saying, oh, what should I do? And I had nothing better for him than that. Literally, if you just, you're obviously you're not recovered. If you feel a bit like you were saying about your energy envelope, like if you feel you can do something, great, but don't just. The hardest thing was managing his expectations, which I want to get on a little bit with you. What you were doing before and what you're doing now, because he's like, before I trained 4 days a week, never missed a session. This is what a session looked like. And the total volume within his session. He's like, now I maybe get like 2 sets of an exercise done and I just have to walk away. And I'm like, well, that's fine. That's what you need to do at this moment in time. Obviously, your body's telling you, it's giving you that feedback that you can't push through. The problem for him was he just felt like, I'm losing all of this progress and all of this sort of, I've worked so hard for this, and now I've just lost it, sort of thing. And will I ever get it back? There's all those uncertainties, and I suppose your mind plays tricks. So to give people a bit of an insight, what did a typical week look for you before this? And then now, what are you up to? Are you maybe at 80% of that, or if you can put a percentage on it?
Yeah. I'd love to talk about that, because I know the bulk of people listening to this are going to be healthy people. And just before I talk about my schedule briefly, in the Facebook group that I'm in, I did a little poll, and I just said, how many people out there consider themselves athletes, were athletic, or very fit? I just want to hear from those. And the people that were commented, it was a huge amount of people responded. There was a US swimmer on the US team. There was a US triathlon star that was in there. There was marathon runners, there was Olympic lifters in there. It was crazy. And these were like people that were just like high-end athletes. I consider myself athletic. I don't consider myself an athlete.
Yeah, whereas these guys, they're legitimate top-level athletes.
This is their job. They literally can't do it, and they're still not recovering, right? And anyway, so prior to this, I'm very sensible with my workouts as well. I've been doing this for like a few decades now, and I also like try and, I've also been through the whole perimenopause thing, which was also a little bit challenging health-wise, but, so I try and manage my week quite well. So basically do strength training, though I'm a strength coach, so that's my focus, and I would work out 4 days a week. My workouts were 40 minutes in session. I always did full body. I never did split body parts. I just prefer to work more from a functional standpoint with the horizontal push pull, hinge, squat. That's basically my jam. I worked my deadlift, I weigh 130. My deadlift was like 225. I was fairly strong for me. Yeah. I didn't ever work to capacity, but I worked hard in my sessions. And I felt really good about myself. I felt like I was a really good advocate for women in their like late 40s, early 50s, that, this is possible. I'm not an endurance bunny, but I'll now swim, of course. But I never used to consider swimming exercise, which is really like another whole other conversation. But I would go for like a 5K run just because it's so nice here in Texas. The weather's so lovely most of the time when it's not too hot. So I'd go out for a 30-minute run, or I'd go out on my bike for 2 hours, like just more to be with nature and just to get that feelings of the endorphins going. So most days a week I would do probably 5 out of 7 days exercise. And I'm not running at all anymore, right? It doesn't feel appropriate at all. I am trying to move every day. And so I'm trying to just do, like, I call it fitness snacking. I've decided that I'm just going to do what I can. And so like yesterday when I was doing the dinner, I sort of did 10 push-ups just because I was like there and I was waiting for the spuds to boil, like something like that. But I'm going into the gym 3 times a week, and I'm not doing any more than 2 sets, exactly like your client. I'm picking 5 exercises that fall within that category. I'm having like a core focus thing because I find them easy, and that's given me a win. Yes. I'm looking for the small wins. I'll do either a deadlift or a squat. I'll do some unilateral leg works, and I'll do some anti-rotational stuff. I'm actually now taking things right back down to complete like functional strength. I'm not looking to break any records. I'm looking to get my core really strong, my glutes working, firing up. I might do some chest press just to, feel good. I'm doing a little bit more TRX work just to move well and challenge my stability. So I'm sort of like fudging my way through it. I'm not writing a specific program. I've sort of got ideas of what I want to achieve, and I suppose I can do that knowing how to write programs. Mm-hmm. But I'm only doing about 2 rounds. It takes me about 15 to 20 minutes. If my heart rate, I'm working with my heart rate, I'm not working past 80% at all. So I'm like this all the time on my Garmin, right? And I'm like, if my heart rate gets too high, I'm just pulling back and just sitting down and taking some breaths, because I found that when I push my heart rate too hard, that's what's making me, it's like that type of stress is just too much for me. And I'm dead sore. I'm really, really sore. They've linked some type of sarcopenia to the disease as well, and I don't know in what respect. There's a guy in Ireland who's a nutritional scientist who's been working with Sim University, and he had a conversation with me to say that the in-hospital patients have lost a massive amount of muscle. I could physically just see, like, 4 months of not having a training has left me like soft and squidgy, and I don't like it. But even just getting over the like physical look of it, I went to do my push-ups the first day and I could do 3, and I was like, okay, that's it. Now I can just do. And so it is what it is, and I'm trying not to judge myself, but I'm just trying to be consistent in going in there, because I do feel better afterwards. And then I'm swimming the other day, so I'm actually doing something every single day. I'm either going for a swim or a bike ride the other days, and I'm literally just trying to just do a little bit to feel emotionally better. And I'm probably now feeling 80% better than, I'm at 80% of full capacity. The lingering thing for me now, because the other things are getting managed through lifestyle and medicine, is fatigue. I still need to take a granny nap about 2:00. And I do. I get a digestive and a cup of tea, and I stick my laptop on my belly, and I watch some crap telly, and then I have a sleep, and then I'm ready to go again. Right.
I was like that when I was 18. So that who knows what that'll play out for me.
I basically know what I'm going to look like at 85. I've already just lived that life for the last. And it was good.
Well, if it means if you get to have a daily digestive biscuit, it's a win for me. I mean, that's any excuse for that. That sounds good.
They're gold dust here. I literally have to go and hunt them out because it's America, Texas, right? I mean, they're like, I hide them from the kids. Like they're my treat, yeah.
Whereas over here, there's 1,000,001 options now. I only learnt during lockdown. There's one which is caramel stuffed now.
Oh,
there you go. It wasn't as good. It wasn't as good as it sounds. To be fair,
stick with the basics, like in fitness. Why mess with what works, right?
Well, yeah, but much like the fads of training, I had to have a go. I had to try it.
Yeah.
But no,
you stood on the Bosu ball of digestive biscuits.
Yes, that's basically the main lesson I had from lockdown. That was it. But and then just reverted back to the basics. But so I think there was some really valuable points you made there about approaching training. So I had to talk to people who had just been out of the gym for 4 months, not sick, but they'd been away from the gym and are managing their transition back. And you've got a whole other layer now on top of that. And I think perhaps given your knowledge of training, you're able to do not a specific program, but I think that's quite important because when something's written down on paper, we have that expectation, and also the people that like to train, they don't like to quit. So they'll almost force themselves through and do more harm than good doing, the sets and reps that are listed as opposed to listening to what their body on the day and what they're capable of on any given day. And I think the other thing you said, which was sort of taking the small wins or the low-hanging fruit, for want of another phrase, that moves you in the right direction, makes you feel good about yourself, a sense of achievement, but it isn't trying to set a new PB straight out of the gate. And one of the things, I don't know what your take on this, but I've had when I've been programming for some clients, is giving them variations of lifts that they've never done before, but they're close enough. Because if I tell a guy go in and do bench press, every guy knows exactly what they could bench press last session, and he's going to be disappointed when he can't do that. But if I'm like, right, we're doing an alternating dumbbell floor press, and I want a 2-second pause at the bottom of every rep, he's working the same muscle group, he's getting that stimulus, and he feels a bit of a pump, and he feels good about it afterwards, but he has no idea what weight he should be able to handle, and therefore he's not emotionally attached to a number. And I didn't learn this straight away. That I didn't have the foresight. I had to start putting that in with a few other guys after some of them had come back and were, sort of the most depressed they'd been was when they realised what had happened to their bench press. So with that sort of idea of having some variety, you mentioned you're doing a bit more TRX stuff, which has a benefit, but perhaps you weren't doing so much before. You're not emotionally attached to a performance on something like that. Do you think that's a helpful?
Yeah, I mean, what you've just said then is just the sign of a really good coach. I mean, anyone can write a program. You could do a weekend course and learn how to write a program, but to learn how to coach somebody, to manage their expectations, life throws setbacks at us. We're talking about me post-COVID, right? But, it happens to us in so many times in our life. It can be from an emotional, traumatic event. It can be from an injury. It can be from an illness. It can be for so many things. And I think that the perfect coach can then work with where the client is at and adapt those things, like taking it to a floor press from a chest press. He has no idea what to expect. It's probably harder. You've created time under tension on at the bottom of that exercise as well, and you're probably going to make him shake like a mouse, and and so I love that that's what you were doing, and I've sort of had to apply that to me as well. I love scripted workouts. I love writing things down. All of us who are into training we like to look back through all of our records, and I've had to just throw that out the window and treat myself like I would have treated one of my clients, and not judge myself and and just do what feels right at the moment, because I know I'm going to get back to it. And I think I like to like use the analogy that, you know, we're all beginners at some stage, right? We all have to start at the bottom and work our way up. And I'm probably not right back at the bottom, but I'm sort of like near the bottom of the pile, and I'm okay with that, because I know that once I feel well again, the progress will be pretty quick.
Yes.
Because when you start out with such a low bar, the progress is usually really quick. So exercising a bit more patience and compassion has been, you know, hard, but
yes.
It's been necessary. I would do it for other people, like you would to your clients, right? So it's been a massive learning curve.
Yeah, and it's hard to apply those lessons and use that logic to yourself, isn't it? You can, if you're writing programs for your clients, you can do it, but for your own programming, somehow we lose that cool-headed logical thinking. And a couple of things you mentioned, I think not judging yourself is a really crucial thing. You've mentioned it a couple of times. I think as a takeaway for people, anyone that's trying to manage their comeback after having coronavirus, that would be something that, it seems to me, is absolutely crucial. Show yourself a little bit of love and know that you will progress. Don't judge yourself right now based on you're comparing apples to oranges, sort of thing. Your performance when you're firing on all cylinders as opposed to having this horrible disease. So.
And, a lot of people who've had coronavirus are left with like a sense of shame and guilt. It's really strange. And I've had it too. Why me? I did everything I thought I was supposed to do, and then you make excuses and you're always trying to and then in my recovery, I'm always trying to make excuses as well. Like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done this, or I don't know. Like I've found it to be a really humbling experience. And so I've tried to talk about that on my Instagram a lot. And I'm being very honest and candid about it, and I think that's really helping me, because I've documented everything, and I've been very open about the whole thing. That's actually how Breaking Muscle found about it, because I was talking about it in my Instagram stories. And I'm like waking up one day going, I think this is it, I think I'm fine, and then 2 days later going, yeah, I feel like crap again.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating for me as a fitness leader to look like I'm failing, but it actually isn't. It's just life, right? And so if anyone's listening to this that's had this and blaming themselves for catching it and then not recovering, like I think those are normal feelings, but they're not helpful at all. And there's nothing you've done to make this happen. It's just one of those things. They don't know why someone can go to hospital for 4 weeks and come out of hospital and be absolutely fine compared to someone with a low, moderate viral dose who's left with it for months. They don't know why. It's not your fault. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a brilliant sort of point to wrap up on there. People take that on board and understand that that sense of shame or guilt is perhaps quite common, and to realise that and understand again that you're not alone in this, I think is a useful one, because I think the isolation is something that's really people are struggling with. So Amanda, we're wrapping up or getting close on time. Don't want to use up too much of your time today. So we've always do a quick fire round on the podcast. So we've got either or options here. So if you just basically one or the other, is it pizza or burger for you?
Oh, pizza. I hate burgers. I hate meat in bread.
Meat in bread. Wow, that's a strong anti-burger sentiment there.
Anti-burger. I'm anti-burger. Yeah.
Yeah. Not even. Most people are like, oh, they're both great, I prefer pizza, but no, fully anti-burger in Texas. I imagine there's plenty of burgers available down there. Right, chocolate or peanut butter? Chocolate. Yeah, because a good British answer, I think that
Can't stand peanut butter either.
Oh,
I'm not anti peanut butter.
You're not anti. No. It's allowed, but it's okay. Beach holiday or city break?
City break.
All right, so that's the first one we've had any kind of thought about. Right, steak, rare or well done?
Don't like steak.
Don't like steak?
Oh, I have so many food issues. Do we want to go there?
Yeah, I know. Well, I've got another one. You can tell that I'm quite food focused with my questions, can't you? Scrambled or poached eggs? Poached eggs.
And poached egg not in a tin, but actually done properly in water with proper poached eggs. Love them.
And can you do that consistently without them disintegrating into
I'm a good cook.
There you go.
My mum's a chef, so she told me.
Okay. All right. So you learnt well there. Yeah. Okay, so next question is, tell me something about yourself that people probably don't already know. This is the one that usually gets people thinking, umming and ahhing a little bit.
I'm a black belt in karate.
There you go. Yeah. Excellent. So when did you take up karate, and how long did it take to get to black belt?
I was a kid. From 11 till 21, and then I stopped. I haven't done it since.
Okay. Right, next, and final question from me is, if I could interview anyone, who should I interview next?
Well, Michelle Obama.
Yeah, I'm sure she's keen to get on the show, yeah?
She is. I spoke to her last week. She's pretty keen. Dr. Fauci.
Not got much on at the moment.
Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, again, he's not busy.
Oh, and then David Beckham.
Why not? Bex? I mean, to be honest, we've had him on already, so...
he's common now, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. I'm over it. I'm over Bex. Yeah. All right, Amanda, just take a moment now to let everyone know where they can find out a bit more about you, how they can get involved in your world, your offerings out on the internet, that sort of thing.
So I'm on Instagram as amanda.thebe. My business name is Fit and Chips. And so if you go to my website, FITN Chips, fitandchips.com, you'll find everything there. That links to everything. I don't do any coaching anymore. I do more like writing. I've just written a book. It comes out on October the 18th in the UK and in Canada and the US. It's called Menopocalypse, and I write about perimenopause from a strength, nutrition and stress management point of view. I think that it's a really good book.
Not that you're biased in any way, shape or form.
Shameless self-promotion. I think you should all go and buy it. Absolutely. And I try and turn just a taboo topic that every woman, if she's lucky enough, will go through. And it can be very challenging into I just try and normalize it and give practical information. Okay,
and that's available for pre-order, is it now?
Oh yeah, you can pre-order it now for your husbands, your wives, your daughters, anyone. Yeah, get
on it. Yeah, so I know I've already checked. It's Amazon in the UK, but available at all good retailers in the States, I think, isn't it? I mean, I saw a few other names. I know,
but if you go to fitandchips.com, everything's on there. You can order it. It links to everything. It's just easier having one place.
All right, guys. In that case, get yourself on Fit and Chips, check it out, get the book, and we will speak to you soon.
Thanks for having me on, Tom.
You're welcome. It's brilliant. Thanks very much. That wraps up today's episode. Thank you so much for investing your time with us. We really appreciate it. If you enjoyed what you heard and took value from it, please do me a favour by heading to iTunes right now, subscribing to the show, and leaving a review. Positive reviews, like 5 stars, hint, hint, really help the ranking of the show and will help us to spread the word and keep getting top-class guests on. Make sure to follow Breaking Muscle on social media and me at Tom McCormick, that's TOMMACCORMICK on Instagram. Bye for now, and I'm looking forward to catching you on the next episode of the Breaking Muscle podcast.